Two men are standing in the same parking lot. One steps out of a leased Lamborghini, all black, paint still smelling like the dealership, watch catching the light, shoes that cost more than most people's rent. The other gets out of a 12-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the back bumper he's never bothered to fix. If you had to guess which one is actually worth 8 figures, you'd guess wrong. The man in the Civic owns 3 businesses, a portfolio he doesn't talk about, and a net worth north of $14 million. The man in the Lamborghini owes $40,000 on a lease, $6,000 on a credit card, and exactly nothing in savings. Here's the uncomfortable part. From the outside, you cannot tell them apart. Not by the car, not by the watch, not by the way they talk about money, because the real millionaire barely talks about it at all. That's the trick. That's the whole trick. Wealth, the actual kind, the kind that survives a bad year, a recession, a divorce, a health scare, that kind of wealth doesn't look like anything. It doesn't perform. It doesn't post. The people who have it spend an enormous amount of energy making sure you never notice. And the people who look rich, statistically, a huge number of them are doing something much closer to financial theater, renting the appearance of success on a monthly payment plan. So today, we're not talking about how quiet millionaires make money. Everyone's obsessed with that part, the side hustle, the stock pick, the 4 a.m. routine. That's not the interesting question anymore. The interesting question is what they refuse to do, the habits they eliminate, the behaviors they treat like a slow leak in a tire, small, easy to ignore, and capable of stranding you on the side of the road at the worst possible moment. 10 of them. Let's get into it. Why does this matter right now, specifically? Because the gap between looking rich and being rich has never been wider, and social media has turned that gap into a business model. Filters, financed cars, staged hotel rooms, an entire economy now exists to manufacture the illusion of wealth for an audience that can't see your bank statement. Meanwhile, actual high-net-worth households have quietly become harder to spot than at any point in modern history. Research on self-made millionaires has shown the same pattern for decades. Most of them live in ordinary homes, drive ordinary cars, and would not stand out at a gas station. The data hasn't changed. What's changed is how loud everyone else has gotten, which means the contrast is sharper now. And contrast is where the lesson lives. So let's break down the system, not what quiet millionaires do, what they've trained themselves to never do. Number 1, they never let a purchase make a statement. Every expensive object you buy has 2 prices. There's the number on the receipt, and there's the message it sends. Quiet millionaires understand that the second price is usually the more expensive one, because once people know what you have, they start pricing you accordingly. Friends ask for loans, family expects gifts, salespeople smell opportunity. The flashy purchase doesn't just cost money once, it costs you, quietly, for years. Number 2, they never carry debt to fund a lifestyle. There's a difference between debt that builds something, a mortgage on an appreciating asset, a loan for a business, and debt that just disappears the moment you stop paying for it. A leased car, a financed vacation, a credit card balance for clothes you've already worn and forgotten. Quiet millionaires treat lifestyle debt the way a sailor treats a hole in the hull. You don't decorate it, you patch it immediately before it sinks anything. Number 3, they never let income raise their spending at the same speed. This one's almost funny in a bleak way. Most people get a raise and their lifestyle expands to swallow it within months. New car, bigger apartment, nicer restaurants. The raise existed briefly as a number on a paycheck, and then it evaporated into a slightly more expensive version of the same life. Quiet millionaires let their income grow and their spending grow much slower on purpose. The gap between those 2 lines is the entire engine of wealth. Everything else is decoration. Number 4, they never stop tracking the number, not bragging about it, tracking it. There's a strange phenomenon where people who are genuinely terrified of poverty avoid checking their bank balance, and people who are building real wealth check it constantly. not out of anxiety, but the way a pilot checks instruments. Quiet millionaires know their net worth the way most people know their phone's battery percentage: glancing, habitual, unemotional. Number 5, they never explain their finances to people who didn't ask for them the right reasons. Silence isn't secrecy here, it's risk management. The moment people know your number, your relationships shape-shift around it. Quiet millionaires learned this the expensive way, usually once, usually early. A friend who started treating them differently, a relative who suddenly had a business idea that needed funding. After that, the information gets locked down, not from shame, from experience. Number 6, they never chase the thing that's currently trending. Whatever asset is on every headline right now, the stock everyone's buying, the coin everyone's posting about, that's usually the worst possible entry point, because the price already reflects everyone's excitement. Quiet millionaires tend to be almost suspiciously bored by hype. By the time something is exciting enough to talk about at a dinner party, the easy money has typically already been made by people who bought it when it was boring. Number 7, they never go without insurance to save a small amount of money. This is the least glamorous item on the list and also the most load-bearing. One lawsuit, one diagnosis, one fire, one flood. That's the entire portfolio, gone in a single afternoon. Quiet millionaires pay for protection the way you'd pay for a seatbelt, not because they expect the crash, because the math on not having one is catastrophic, and the cost of having one is almost nothing by comparison. Number 8, they never depend on one paycheck, one client, or one company. A single income source is a single point of failure. Quiet millionaires build layers: a job, plus investments, plus a side business, plus real estate, plus something else entirely. Not because they're restless, but because they've watched what happens to people who put all their financial weight on one structural beam. When that beam goes, so does the house. Number 9, they never confuse a high income with wealth. A surgeon earning $400,000 a year and spending $390,000 of it is not wealthy. He's expensive to maintain. Wealth isn't what you earn, it's what you keep multiplied by what that kept amount can earn while you sleep. Quiet millionaires obsess over the second number. Everyone else obsesses over the first. Number 10, they never make a major financial decision in an emotional state. Panic selling in a crash, euphoric buying in a bubble, revenge spending after a breakup. Every one of these feels urgent in the moment and looks insane 2 years later. Quiet millionaires build in delay on purpose, a 48-hour rule, a rule to sleep on anything over a certain dollar amount, because they've learned that the version of themselves making decisions at midnight, angry or thrilled, is not a version they trust with real money.
Now here's the part that actually explains why this works. And it's not complicated, even though an entire industry would prefer you think it is. Wealth is not built by income. It's built by the gap between what comes in and what goes out, compounding over time. That's it. That's the whole mechanism. Picture two people earning the exact same salary for 20 years. One spends 95% of it. The other spends 70% of it and invests the rest at a normal long-term market return. By year 20, they are not living in the same financial universe. Not close. The first person has a nice car and a closet full of evidence that they once had money. The second person has an asset base quietly generating more income than their original job ever paid. Same income, same 20 years, completely different outcome, because the entire game was decided by what they refused to do with the extra 5, 10, 20%. That's the uncomfortable math. It's not about the big dramatic financial decision. It's about the 1,000 small ones nobody's watching. Now contrast that with what gets sold to you as wealth. The version of rich that gets marketed to you is loud on purpose, because loud is what gets attention, and attention is what sells courses, cars, and watches. Every flashy purchase you see online exists, in part, to make you feel behind, so you'll spend money trying to catch up to an image that, in a lot of cases, isn't even real for the person posting it. The irony is almost poetic. The people performing wealth the hardest are often the ones who can least afford the performance, and the people who could actually afford a Lamborghini are usually the ones least interested in buying one, Because once you understand what money actually does for you, a depreciating asset that loses value the second you drive it off the lot stops looking like a flex and starts looking like a math error. Reality is boring. Reality is a spreadsheet, a savings rate, a decision made on a Tuesday afternoon to not buy something. Nobody's filming that. It doesn't trend, but it's the only version of this that actually compounds. So zoom out for a second, because this isn't really a story about 10 habits. It's a story about two competing definitions of success running side by side in the same economy, and most people can't tell which one they're playing. One version is about looking like you've already made it. The other is about quietly building something that doesn't need an audience to be real. The risk isn't just that the flashy version costs money, it's that it costs time. Years spent optimizing for how your life looks instead of how it functions. And time, unlike money, doesn't compound back. You don't get a redo on your 30s because you spent them financing an image instead of building a foundation. There's also a wider, slower implication here beyond any one person's bank account. An entire generation is now growing up watching wealth performed in real time, at a scale and speed no previous generation ever had to process. The visual language of money has become detached from the actual mechanics of money. People are learning what rich looks like long before they learn what rich requires. That's a strange thing to inherit. So here's where this leaves you. Somewhere in your life right now, there's probably a purchase, a habit, or a financial decision that exists purely for an audience, even if that audience is just the version of yourself you're trying to convince. The quiet millionaire doesn't have a secret system you're missing. They just stopped performing a long time ago and let the math do the rest, undisturbed, for years, without applause. The real question isn't whether you could live like that, it's whether you'd be willing to if no one was ever going to notice.